Welcome to Box Out Banter, where we are finally at the playoffs. Well, almost. We're at the play-in tournament. We had a kind of wild end of the season. Half the West reshuffled to avoid the demon of the Los Angeles Lakers. But we'll get into all that. Joining me as always, Mr. Jordan Christmas. How's it going, Jordan?
Feeling great, fully vaxxed. So if I turn into like Static Shock or something during this podcast, I'm sorry.
So this is what I wanted to talk. This is what I wanted to start the show off with. When did you get your shot?
My second shot today, like just 3 hours ago.
Okay, so this is what happened to me. I got mine on Friday. I got my second shot on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who doesn't know, and you should know if you're watching the show at some point, I obviously work for an esports team that focuses on fighting games. Jordan and I are both fans of fighting games. So Guilty Gear Strive had their second beta weekend this past weekend. And so I was super hyped to play and get to jump in there. My main from past Guilty Gears is and she was put into this beta, so I was super excited to play. And so yeah, that Friday I was like, cool, let me play Guilty Gear for a bit. So I played for about 4 hours, and my arm, like after you get the shot, your arm starts to really hurt. Like the arm pain is ridiculous from the vaccine. I don't know what it is. And so my arm started to hurt, and I was like, all right, it's not a big deal. Like I can still hit buttons or whatever. It doesn't hurt that bad. And then I started to get a headache at like 2 a.m. I was getting a headache. And I was like, oh, and I started to get dizzy. I was like, okay, like maybe too much Guilty Gear. Let me back off the Guilty Gear. So I backed off, and I went to go lay down, and I was like, I'll go to bed, and I'll wake up in the morning, I'll play more Guilty Gear. I didn't play a single minute of Guilty Gear after that.
Oof.
Because I was in bed for 2 straight days with chills, fever, migraine, and body aches that like it was like the worst flu I ever had.
Oh boy, this isn't exactly encouraging.
No. So like, you better buckle up for tonight.
I've heard mixed. So like I've heard a few people now who have gotten the second dose and say they're completely fine. But I've probably, if I had to do a count, I probably have heard a lot more of like your case, where like it's the headaches, it's the arm pain and stuff like that. And I do feel a little bit more soreness in my arm than quite frankly the first dose. I didn't feel anything at all.
First dose, nothing hit me.
Yeah.
First dose, I was totally fine, and like I was like, oh yeah, maybe my arm hurts a little bit, and like maybe I was a little tired that day, but like I just woke up and it was fine. But yeah, I woke up that Saturday and I could not do a damn thing.
And this also doesn't bode well because I'm an overnight person, so I'm going to be going into work tonight. And if I get effects towards the end of my shift, that's not going to be fun. But I'm confident that I'll be fine. But I am feeling the arm soreness a little bit. I'm just happy to be fully vaxxed and just see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Dude, we can make out. Make out?
No, we won't do that. But
good.
But no,
okay.
We don't have to do that. But yes, summer is going to be it's going to be fun. I have 2 plans this summer. I only planned for 2 because still trying to be as safe as possible. But I made these 2 plans knowing that I was going to be fully vaxxed, and I'm just glad that there's light at the end of the tunnel now, I guess is what I'm trying to ultimately say. And the season also ended, and there was light at the end of the tunnel for that. But then we got play-ins. There's no NBA games on today, unfortunately, but tomorrow is the start of the new format, the play-in, and it went down to the wire. Like, teams were still jockeying for position. The Clippers were doing everything they can, moving heaven, hell, and earth to avoid the Lakers, possibly. The Nuggets wanted the Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks wanted to avoid the Clippers. There was some buffoonery going on in the standings yesterday, which is always a welcome sight to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So what caught your eye for this last week or this last couple weeks of leading up to the play-in? Like, kind of how the excitement level of this plan?
So a couple of things. One, I think I said on my podcast 2 weeks ago that my top three MVP like candidates is obviously Jokic, number one. He's going to win it. Two would be Embiid. And then I had Giannis penciled in as the third, but I'm going to erase that and put in Stephen Curry. Because Stephen Curry has been spectacular all season long. And maybe like later in the podcast, I wanted to write it down, but there's a few things I enjoyed about this season. And obviously it's not one of the best seasons in terms of like, the blowouts were really bad. There were a lot of blowouts. And I think Chris Herring of Sports Illustrated did a good piece on this, but there's been an abnormal amount of 20-point blowouts, 40 or 50-point blowouts. But there are a few things I took from the season, and Stephen Curry obviously was one of my favorite storylines of the season, because everyone was like, "Oh, can he lead a team to the playoffs without Kevin Durant, even though he did that before? Oh, can he still it's going to look different now without Klay Thompson spacing the floor for him. Why do I still see screenshots of dudes quadrupling him at half court like it was still his unanimous MVP season? Why is he still efficient like this? Oh, it's because Stephen Curry is one of the greatest players of all time. And I know we've harped on this before on this podcast, but this is one of my favorite FU seasons from a player, where it was like, all right, y'all doubted me. I guess I have to remind you guys who I am. And now he's won his second scoring title at the age of 33. The only other person to do that was MJ. Him, Wilt, and I think one other are the only players to win multiple MVPs, multiple scoring titles, and multiple championships. And also, I just want to say, when I say Stephen Curry's the greatest shooter ever, that's obvious. Like that's been over for like 7 years now, as far as I'm concerned. But he's one of the great scorers, period. Like, he is just a great player, and I am so glad that he had the season he had. And it just made me think, please put a contending team around this man. And Draymond, because Draymond Green, he would probably be second or third on my Defensive Player of the Year ballot. He's definitely All-NBA first team. But those two guys, the Warriors pillars, still got it. Draymond probably not so much on offense, scoring-wise, but he was every bit as good defensively this year as peak Draymond. And the Warriors somehow, who were a tire fire defensively at the start of the year, are top 5, finished the season top 5 in defensive rating because of this dude. And both of those guys, I thought it was just a Clint Eastwood season for them, and comeback season. I loved it. So that was my main takeaway.
So here's my question, and I know we brought this up before. So they get Klay back next year.
Mm-hmm.
Does that solve their problems? No, right?
No, they probably need one or two more players, I imagine.
What if Wiseman progresses? What if Wiseman progresses the way we think he'll progress? And, like, not be an all-star or whatever, but, like, be a solid contributing player. Do they still need another wing?
They definitely need another wing. The Wiseman questions...
Just Kelly Oubre or Andrew Wiggins?
You see, Andrew Wiggins, he had a solid year. So I'm going to give credit to Andrew Wiggins where it's due. He scored at his career high efficiency, which is like league average true shooting percentage, but he was legit their second best defender. Kelly Oubre, he got hurt as he was turning it around, but I wouldn't bring him back. But they definitely, I wouldn't be surprised if they looked into trading Wiseman and possibly trading the Minnesota pick to finesse something, because
Cade.
I mean, Cade would be nice. LaMelo would have been nice for this Warriors team also.
Oh my God, LaMelo would have been beautiful. Could you imagine LaMelo flanked by Klay and Steph?
And the pass, they would have had two great passers in LaMelo and Draymond. They would have had two great off-ball weapons, obviously, with Steph and Klay. That would have been fun. But I think this season showed, with Curry having the MVP type season he had, and with Wiseman's development probably coming on slower than we would have thought, you'd have to think, can they really expect a giant leap from Wiseman to match the time. How long does Steph have left is the question. It's a legitimate question. He could.
Do you think Steph leaves?
No, I don't think Steph leaves. I think he's going to be a Warrior for life. I really do think that matters to him. I think that matters to him and Dame. I don't know why it would matter to Bradley Beal in Washington, but it does. So I guess I respect it. But I think for those 2 point guards in particular, those 2 guys who are probably going to be first team All-NBA, I'd imagine being with the same team with a fan base like that matters. Do you think he leaves?
I have it up in the air. I think it depends on how this next season goes.
There could be a Charlotte play down the road. I could see that.
Yeah, I think like even obviously like the Lakers stuff is like overblown. I think that's a little like optimistic and like overdrawn. But I think like if the Warriors get all their pieces back, so they get Clay back and they rebuild the roster, they retune a little bit, and they are still a mid to bottom tier West Conference team, I don't know if he thinks like I'm gonna stay here the rest of like 4 or 5 years left here.
See, the way the teams look to me, if Clay came back, I could see the Warriors having a better. I would have taken them over Portland. I would have taken them over Dallas. They would have been in the 3 to 5 range to me, because I think the Warriors were 36-27 when Steph played. Like, that's in the Western Conference. Yeah. That's nothing to sniff at or turn your nose up at. And Clay might not be the same, but he's still going to be that same heat check knockdown shooter. We'll see how he looks defensively, obviously, but with him coming back, man, I just really enjoyed this Steph season. And I was on one of my other Blue Wire Hustle colleagues' podcast, the There's a Lot Going On podcast, and we had to pick upsets. I don't believe this upset, so you could just take what I say right now with a grain of salt. The upset I want to see is if the Warriors do lose to the Lakers, which I expect them to, unless Steph just has one game where he goes nuclear. I want to see the Warriors upset the Jazz.
Yes,
I want it. I want to see it. I want to see Steph annihilate the Jazz. I want to see him rain down threes on the entire state of Utah. I want to see the Warriors make John Hollinger regret putting Rudy fucking Gobert as your second MVP
that was
candidate.
Ridiculous, by the way.
That was anybody who has Rudy Gobert anywhere near the top 4, top 5 of your MVP candidates is nuts. If Rudy Gobert's higher than your second team center, that's nuts. Like, I understand.
Because he's one of the only players that plays center still.
Like, I understand, yes, Utah's entire system is built around Rudy Gobert being amazing defensively. His offense is built around the fact that he's a nasty screener. He is not an MVP candidate. I am sorry. That is just Donovan Mitchell's the best player on that team. Rudy Gobert definitely brings value, the most value probably to the Jazz, but Donovan Mitchell's their best player, and he is not a top 2 MVP candidate. He's not.
That's how I feel about the Chris Paul debate too, where I think Chris Paul is more important to the Suns, but he's not their best player. And so like for me it's hard to debate like MVP status when you're not the best player on your team.
Yeah,
like you can be the most important, but it's hard to debate like when Devin Booker's the best player on your team. It's hard to debate that Chris Paul is the MVP when he's not the best but the most important. You know what I mean?
Especially because like it'd be one thing if Gobert like upped his scoring a little bit more and wasn't as much of a liability in space. I do think it's overblown kind of, but the criticism's valid. And maybe he does up some parts of his game to make him better than Mitchell while also bringing all that value. But get out of here with Gobert being first team All-NBA. I'm glad Hollinger doesn't have a vote. Otherwise, it would have been Sixer fans would have really been livid. But like putting Gobert first team center and then second on your MVP list, I'm sorry, that's too much for me. That's like the classic analytics guy trying to really try to sound smarter than everybody else, and it's just like, all right, nah, like that's I'm sorry. But enough about me. But I forgot you're working with the Jazz in some capacity, so I don't want to do too much Jazz slander.
The Jazz 2K Jazz gaming team is nowhere near association with this with my slander of the Jazz basketball team.
I was afraid that the Jazz slander would dissipate on the BOV.
Oh, absolutely not. No way. That's the contract, baby. I can still slander the Jazz all I want. So no, I completely agree with you that like watching, because especially with the way Donovan Mitchell has sort of ended his season as injury ridden and hobbled as he has been the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
or actually a month now.
Yeah, because that ankle injury ankle turn was bad against the Pacers. And again,
ankle injuries are usually pretty lingering.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can't go, I don't know what's gonna happen with them trying to guard Steph. Like no one can guard Steph. Yeah. But at the same time, you have a team like the Lakers who do a pretty good job of not stopping him, or at least doing the best job they can, because they have so many guards good defensive guards to throw at him.
Yep.
I don't know how many people the Jazz have to throw at him.
They probably have more if the Jazz had faced the Lakers, the size on the perimeter would have been my huge question, because aside from Royce O'Neal, are you going to throw Bojan Bogdanovic on LeBron? This is not the 2018 Pacers Cavs series where everyone was like, oh, Bojan actually kind of defended LeBron well, while LeBron averaged like 35, 11, and whatever he did. They're the only like-sized players they have are Niang, Ingles, Bogdanovic. Like those guys aren't stopping LeBron. I think the Jazz have a bit more to throw at Steph just because of the size, but no one's stopping Steph. Like, Steph has been incredible all year, and I would just love to see an upset of that. I wouldn't bet my money on it happening, but I would just love to see the Warriors upset the Jazz.
The comparisons to the We Believe team need to stop, because it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing, because
it's not the same.
Because those are, like Draymond said, they won championships.
Yes.
Like those, Steph and Draymond are 3-time champions. Also, there was a lot more tougher dudes on that We Believe team. Also,
crappy. This Warriors team is more like skilled, and it's just Steph getting real hot.
Yeah.
And where the We Believe team was like the grind it out, like we're gonna kick your ass, beat your ass, kind of like. Dude, look at the people on that team. Matt Barnes.
Steven
Baron
Jackson.
David. Steven Jackson,
Monte Ellis, Al Harrington.
You had like thugs on that team. You had dudes that were like I want to see. If you had to make like an all NBA bring these people to a dark alley with you team, like 3 of those guys from the We Believe team are definitely on my list. And they literally punked the Mavs that entire series. That's how they won.
Yeah, they got up in Dirk's jersey because they would not give him an inch on the block. And then, by the way, low-key what if Baron Davis, if he didn't have his injuries, he would have been one of the nastiest point guards of all time. He would have been a Hall of Famer. He was that good. Like, Baron Davis was legit.
Baron Davis was a beast. And then he went to the Clippers and was like... Not great.
Yeah, and then he had his patella tendon injury, I think, with the when he joined the Knicks, and Baron Davis is a big what if. But what about you? So you obviously watched, teams try to avoid your team, the Lakers, and the possible matchups. What were your takeaway? What was like your big takeaways as we head into the play-in and the playoffs?
So I might have been one of the few people. I actually wanted the 7th seed. Okay. I wanted the play-in because I want that. Obviously we're getting healthy now, and LeBron looks like LeBron. AD's starting to look like AD. This is probably the healthiest we've been all season, so I'm pretty happy about that. I think I want another tune-up game against the Warriors, which I think is a pretty... I don't want to say easy, because Steph could go off and do anything he wants at any point in time. But I think, I think the Warriors are as easy a game as you can hope for in this kind of scenario. Just given the matchups and the way everything works out.
Yep.
And so, I think that's a pretty kind of walk through, not layup of a game, but like a good warm up game for them to like kind of ramp into the playoffs. And I think the Suns are better. Even though I still think the Suns are the second best team in the West, I think that they are probably the Lakers' best matchup.
That's a nightmare for the Suns. They don't
Yeah.
want the Lakers in the first round.
Absolutely not. And so, I think the Suns are the second best team in the West, but I think the Lakers do match up against them the best. Where I think the Lakers have an advantage in almost every scenario.
Right.
And so, when you look at the way the teams are structured, I'd rather play the Suns than the Nuggets or the Clippers in round one.
Yeah. And
to me, I was like, let's get the 7, warm up against the Warriors, and then go into the Sun series and get an easy 4-1 or 4-0, and then rest up for whatever comes next.
You think it'd be 4-1 or 4-0 in a matchup with the Suns? I could see that, because when I look at the Suns, they beyond Ayton, they really don't have anybody that could check Anthony Davis or contend with the Lakers' size on the front line, really. And on top of that, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, as integral as they have been to the Suns and their defense all year, they're not going to stop LeBron. Torrey Craig also isn't going to stop LeBron. And I feel bad for Suns fans, because I have been in on the Suns, my Devin Booker standum, and I was, we were both really in on the Suns. I feel bad for them, because they are getting the worst possible matchup they better turn into Warriors fans tomorrow, on Wednesday. They better turn into Warriors fans on Wednesday and hope that Steph drops like 50 and Draymond has like 10 blocks and 10 steals, because if the Lakers play the Suns, I really don't see how. I think it would probably be 5 or 6, but the Lakers are just the better team at that point. Also, well, there could be a chance that, the Lakers could still be gelling, which is also kind of weird why teams were avoiding the Lakers. I think you might have retweeted it or something, but the Lakers are still trying to, gel together. Like, there was a reason they played deep into the fourth quarter yesterday with LeBron and Anthony Davis, and Lakers fans had to have a heart attack when LeBron stepped on, I think, Najee Harris's foot. But
ED, like, please get him out. But
there was a reason. There was a reason they were playing late into the fourth quarter, though. They were trying to get reps, because they haven't really played together that much, since LeBron and Anthony Davis have come back from their injuries, and LeBron also missed like a few more games after he initially came back. But I would want to play the Lakers early as opposed to catching them in the Western Conference. But I get it. It would have been a disaster for the Clippers if, they got knocked out by the Lakers in round one. So, they were scared. But this is just a bad matchup for the Suns. I think the Suns actually got the crap end of the stick on this one.
I feel really bad for them, because again, we've both been in on them since the beginning of the season. My thing is the thing where the Lakers are starting to get scary, where LeBron looks like LeBron, AD looks like AD, but also like guys like Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond's really starting to figure out where he belongs and like what he's doing. Yeah, I don't know if you've watched, but he's starting to like really understand his position in the dunker spot. And he's noticed like when to cut, when not to, follow LeBron whenever he sets a pick. Like, he's clever at kind of like finding the spaces to trail behind LeBron so he could get an offensive rebound. He's a former all-star player. Like, he understands. He's a high IQ basketball player, and he's smart, and he's starting to figure out where he belongs, like what he's good at. And then also Vogel's starting to realize like the power of having Marc Gasol out there with everyone too.
Yeah, and I would still ultimately play Marc Gasol over Drummond, but
would I? But I mean, I think if Drummond starts to understand his role a lot better, which he has, I think he's going to be he's proving himself to be more and more valuable as he figures it out. Yep. So again, just with more time, they're going to get scarier. If given health as a constant, I think that they're going to be scarier and scarier. And I think like you want to pick them up early, but I totally understand where they're coming from in terms of wanting to avoid and kind of try to avoid them as much as possible. But yeah, I think so. looking at the West, do you think the Grizzlies and the Spurs have a chance at all? No, right?
To win the next playing game? No, I don't.
So it's Warriors Lakers, right?
I think it's Warriors I think it's Warriors 8th seed, Lakers 7th seed. I think the Grizzlies have an outside chance to beat the Warriors in a play-in game more than anything, but the Spurs, no. And with the Grizzlies, if you saw how they played Ja Morant yesterday, they had no respect for his outside game whatsoever. And also, they're still trying to, get Jaren Jackson integrated back into the mix, so the lineup decisions will be interesting there in a, winner go home type of scenario. I think the Grizzlies will beat the Spurs, even though I think it'll be closer than maybe the record and seeding suggests, because they're both really young. They have talented players, and I just think in those type of win-all scenarios, you can't really. It's not like a series where you could see how matchups will play out as a series would evolve. I think in a one-game scenario, it gets a little bit more dicey. But I see the Grizzlies beating the Spurs, and I see the Warriors beating the Grizzlies, and they end up being the 8th seed ultimately. Same for, and yeah, I don't see it any other way being 2-7 or 2-8 Lakers and Warriors.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. I think looking at the East, it's a little more interesting.
East is interesting
because I could I could see the Hornets making it in the playoffs here.
That's what. So this is what I said yesterday. So this is what I said on the Talgo podcast. You guys should check it out. Put it up on my Twitter. I know the Hornets. They're probably not going to have Hayward, and honestly, I thought Hayward would have been back by now, which is kind of why I said this yesterday. But I think the Hornets could beat the Pacers. The Pacers have been falling apart at the seams, it seems like, with their coaching stuff. Their defense has not been good at all. And I know the Hornets, they've lost 5 in a row. They haven't really shown much offensively as of late, but I think they have enough talent to beat the Pacers. And I think in a one game scenario, I think they could have a chance at upsetting one of Boston or Washington. Probably Boston, because I actually think the Celtics are going to I think they're going to get destroyed by Washington. Yeah, with the Jaylen Brown injury, that's a death sentence for Boston. They were already, not that good anyway as compared to years past. The Wizards have been they're 17-9 in their last 21 games and are actually average defensively, and of course they are a high scoring team offensively with Westbrook playing out of his goddamn mind. So I see the Wizards beating the Celtics, but in that next playing game, I could see, and obviously Jason Tatum going off withstanding, I could see the Hornets upsetting the Celtics here.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, I wanted to say this. I wanted to make an observation about, my team, the Sixers. There is now no excuse for this team not to be in the conference finals. None. The Knicks beat the Redmayne. People were joking yesterday, calling the lineup that the Celtics put out against the Knicks yesterday as the main Red Claws, their G League team, which was basically it. And the Knicks almost lost that game, which scared me a little bit. But the teams I did not want to face in my ranked order was Miami 1A, Milwaukee 1B, and the Nets 2. And Miami is now on the other side of the bracket. And so the Sixers will either get to play one of whoever the 8th seed is. That should be a series. Easy series win. And then they play whoever wins the 4-5 matchup between the Hawks and the Knicks. There is no excuse. They worked all year to get the number 1 seed so they could have an opportunity like this. The path to the conference finals is clear. Milwaukee and Brooklyn have the tougher paths. They're probably going to maul each other in the second round. And so the Sixers will get whoever comes out of that.
Whatever team left.
Yeah, exactly. And basically, if the Sixers don't make the conference finals, it is a failure. And because they're better than whoever they're going to play in the next 2 rounds. And I'm excited The process worked. Everybody needs to shut up. I have watched mediocre teams my entire life definitely since Allen Iverson got traded. They're the number 1 seed for the first time since I was 9 years old in 2001. And because we have an MVP level player like Joel Embiid. The process worked, and I am very ecstatic. That is the other reason I came into this podcast with energy today, Chris. My Sixers were able to get the number 1 seed. Has been a culmination of a few things. I've seen more 50-win teams in this era than I have had at any point in my life, besides that one season with Allen Iverson in 2001. And we're here now, and so there's no excuse. Get to the conference finals.
Hey Jordan, what happened in 2001 though?
Yeah, well, you guys had this dude named Shaquille O'Neal who stuffed, hey, maybe it'll come, a few of my Laker fans joked about this when I posted it on Instagram, but, it'll come back full circle. The Sixers will play the Lakers in the NBA Finals, and instead of Shaq stuffing Mutombo in the basket, it'll be Embiid stuffing AD in the basket. So it's all good.
Oh, man. All right, I'm in for this matchup because this matchup would make this podcast very exciting.
Yes, it would. It would be very tense too, because if the Sixers win the championship, all of process Twitter, people who were pro process, pro Hinkie, every national media member who had awful takes about the process over the years better just run into hiding or deactivate their account.
So I don't know. This breaking news on Twitter. I'm just scrolling right now. I just took a look. Sources say Luke Walton will retain his job.
No, I'm sorry. I am sorry, Sacramento.
How does this happen?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Sacramento. This team had 2 different 9-game losing streaks this season. Dave Yeager won 39 games with a team that was not as talented as these last 2 years.
Yeah, okay. We'll just leave that.
Kings fans are their souls just left their body.
Okay. I feel bad, but whatever. Okay.
Let's go back to the playoff teams.
Well, so going back to Twitter, before we even go back to the playoff teams, did you see this stuff going on today with Kwame Brown?
Yeah. I haven't seen the full rant yet, but I don't know if you saw it. This started on All the Smoke. Yeah, on All the Smoke. So, the Gilbert Arenas episode was great, by the way. I love anything Gilbert's on.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, All the Smoke had Gilbert Arenas on, and they started talking about Kwame Brown. And Gilbert, he paid what I thought was like kind of a backhanded compliment, but compliment nonetheless to Kwame Brown. I think the term he used was show pony, where he had all the physical tools and all of the look and the physical attributes, but he couldn't ever put it together, or wasn't, he was never confident enough to put it together. He said you would see flashes of it, and you would see kind of the every once in a while you'd see a little bit of it, but he could never just put it together. And I think that's true. I think that's why he had such a long career versus someone where you look at someone like Anthony Bennett, who probably should never have been there in the first place.
Former Sixer great Kwame Brown.
So, and then Kwame shot back today with with a big rant and a lot of things that weren't basketball related, just kind of went after people and was kind of mean-spirited. Not mean-spirited, but just sort of oddly aggressive.
I think I don't know if it's oddly aggressive. I think he's just got tired of it because the way Kwame Brown sounded, he just sounded like one of those OGs that I don't think he was saying this to, get back in the spotlight or whatever. I really think where he's from, he wants to fight those dudes because they were playing with his name. Or he felt like they were playing with his name.
Right.
I think also in that All the Smoke episode, Gilbert also mentioned how Michael Jordan drafted Kwame Brown and then ended up being his teammate, and that also had an impact on him because we all know how Michael Jordan is with players and how, not mean-spirited, but it could definitely come off that way because it's Michael Jordan. He is a psycho. Yeah. He's competitive. He'll talk shit to his players and all that stuff. And that, for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, I could definitely still see Gilbert's point. I think what happened was I think there was another All the Smoke episode where Matt and Steven Jackson talked about Kwame Brown, and I think Gilbert tried to defend him in this episode, and I think Kwame just got tired of it.
He went after Gilbert, and I was like, well, I think Gilbert was actually the nicest one to you.
Yeah, he tried to defend Gilbert, but I really do think Kwame Brown meant what he said, calling Steven Jackson like a fake gangster and all that stuff, and I think what he called Matt Barnes Becky with pretty hair. He was I don't know if it was definitely aggressive, but it was one of those look, I'm tired of these people playing with me, like where I'm from, and the reputation I have. And even Gilbert Arenas, I think, commented on Kwame's live Instagram when he went on, and he was like, look, everything Kwame says about himself in terms of fighting and all that stuff he was basically like, that's true. I don't want no smoke. I'm sorry. And it was really weird I haven't seen the whole rant or the multiple videos he's had since then, but the main rant where it was an hour and 20 or whatever it was, I haven't seen that yet, but it was it seems like we're definitely learning some stuff about Kwame, not that it's not good or bad stuff, just what he was about and where he's from and all that stuff, because I imagine if it was any other player, because players have gone at Steven Jackson before, for off the court criticisms, and Jack will fire back with you don't want this or whatever. And then when Kwame did it, it was we're not going to have you on our show and stuff like that. So it's it seems like nobody wants smoke with Kwame Brown is what I'm trying to say. As much as we like to make all the bus jokes and all that stuff, doesn't seem like he's anyone to play with.
I will say, though, as a Laker fan cheering for Kobe Bryant for all those years, Kwame Brown was the most frustrating player to watch.
Oh yeah, for sure. I imagine. He's a top pick, too.
Yeah, I've never seen a player like Kwame Brown where I want to throw my TV through the door every time. I know we talk about my favorite comment was, do you watch the All the Smoke where you're talking about it?
The Kwame stuff?
Gilbert's going through the whole thing about it.
Oh yeah, I watched that whole 2 hour, anything with Gilbert on it is
line, and you can probably guess what it is. It's he's big, he's second fastest player on our team. Small hands though, so when he goes off,
the ball's still there. Matt Barnes the camera panned to Matt Barnes cracking up 30 times in that episode just because Gilbert would say some crazy stuff.
That was the GOAT line. I've never heard that. So
he's he'll take off, but the ball's still there. he'll take off though. He'll make it straight to the rim, but the ball will be right behind.
But yeah, I don't. It was such a weird thing to wake up to because I went wow. Where did this come from Kwame? Because it's not
why is he trending?
Yeah, I was like, why is Kwame Brown trending? And then when it came out, I was like, maybe he's just sick of it. But at the same time, this is the first time, dude. He's people going after Kwame Brown all the time.
Yeah, and apparently this was the I guess when it's actual players, talking about him, and players that invoke discussion in a way that Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson do. I guess that's the last straw. Media members, whatever. He really didn't. He went at Stephen A. Smith too in the video, but he's never really gone at Stephen A. Smith or any media members because I guess players know that just comes with the territory. But when it's your peers, saying stuff about you, that must strike a different chord, I imagine.
I would assume so. So I get it. I get Kwame, you defend yourself and you do your thing. But my thing was dude, Gilbert. I felt like Gilbert was trying to defend.
I thought Gilbert was defending him in his Gilbert Arenas way. So maybe he had a problem with one or two things he said. But Gilbert was Gilbert's comments about Kwame Brown were in reaction to what Matt and Stack were saying. And,
he was trying to justify.
He's hey, come on, guys. The dude was drafted out of high school. Michael Jordan drafted him. Like, it's kind of easy to make that connection, what he was implying, you know? Like, it's not easy, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was the thing of like, cool, go at Jack and go at Matt Barnes, but like, hey, man,
Gilbert he was trying to help you out, man.
Yeah, so that's where I was like, okay, I feel like you're taking it out on everyone when like there's someone here trying to protect you, someone here trying to help.
Yeah, but when you're pissed, everybody can get it.
That's very true.
I had a question for you for the playoffs. So the 3-6 matchup in each conference, I find both of these really interesting. So I wanted to get your take on which one do you find the most interesting. I wanted to know what your answer is and why one series over the other.
Okay.
So in the West, we got the 3-6.
I think it's Heat Bucks.
Same. I agree.
I think the Heat are hot. I think they're coming off solid wins. I think they're coming in. They're ready to go. I think the Bucks have a lot of weight on their shoulders not to lose again in the playoffs. I think they're coming off of sort of I don't want to say a down year because they're still a top 3 team in the West and the East. I just think this is not nearly as dominant a season as they were. I think they look better, but they're not nearly as dominant as they were last season.
The record isn't as dominant,
right? And so I think there's a lot of things to prove on both sides, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out. And I think they're very different in the way they approach their setups and the way they play the game. But yeah, I think the Nuggets are going to blow through the Trailblazers.
Yeah, there are a few people who think the Blazers could upset the Nuggets, and I'm just like, if Dame averages 50, sure, but like the Nuggets should beat up the Blazers, I think, pretty handily. They don't have anyone to check Jokic. They still have scoring even without Jamal Murray to handle the Blazers, and I think the Nuggets are better defensively, obviously. But like, no, I don't see that being a series. The Bucks one, that's the most interesting one I want to watch outside of obviously my team, because obviously this was the team that Miami was the team that eliminated the Bucks last year in the second round. You could attribute that to circumstances, but matchup I think was the big thing. I want to see if all the Bucks experimentation in the season, the stuff Giannis has added to his game, and third and most importantly, and why I actually put the Bucks behind the Heat as the team that I don't want to face the most, is because I want to see if Mike Budenholzer can actually make some damn adjustments and get out of his old ways. I think in terms of just matchup on the court wise, I don't think the Heat have the same personnel to mimic the Wall that they were successful with in the playoffs. Also, I think the Bucks have different personnel and run different things now to make the Wall more ineffective, because the Wall was basically built to stop Giannis, the guy at the top of the key, every possession player, not Giannis, the guy that's being used more all over the floor player. And the reason they can do that now is because they have Drew Holiday, who is 100,000% not Eric Bledsoe. Sorry, what?
I said that's the bonus. That's the fix.
That's the big fix right there, because they can do the Wall stuff. Okay, Giannis can do a dribble handoff with Drew Holiday, and so that makes the defense where the center guards Giannis less ineffective. It makes the Wall setup less ineffective because they have multiple ball handlers now with Middleton and Holiday that are threats off the dribble that the Heat have to worry about. I just think the Bucks can run different stuff, but I think Eric Spoelstra is a way better coach than Mike Budenholzer. I think Jimmy and Bam are obviously depending on who's voting, some will make, both of them will make all NBA teams for some. One will make an all NBA team over the other, whatever it is. The Heat are hot, but I don't think they're the same necessarily. I think not having Crowder takes away like their personnel to be able to build up the wall. Iguodala's a year older. Goran Dragic has not been good this season, except, for these last couple weeks of the season. Duncan Robinson, who was an all-time great shooter last year, had an all-time great shooting season. Not the same. Tyler Hero, not the same. And honestly, expectedly so, because I thought he got way too much hype coming out of the bubble. Basically what I'm saying is I think the Bucks have no excuse. I think they should win this series. I think it should be a 4-1, 4-2 series, but they have better personnel. They have experimented with different schemes all season. And if Mike Budenholzer doesn't adjust and the Bucks lose, there needs to be a shakeup. Mike needs to be fired at the very least. Maybe look to trade not trade one of the big three, but maybe look at Middleton deals. I know that's probably going to be an option the Bucks will maybe go down to if they get an early exit, because a shakeup needs to happen, because there's no way. I don't think this Heat team is as good as it was last year, as much as I don't want to face them, because I think the Sixers' offensive flaws play right into the Heat's hands is the main reason why. I don't think as talent-wise the Heat are as good as last year, even with the leaps Bam and Jimmy have made this year. So this it's going to be interesting. We get to see what the Bucks are made of early, and I'm kind of excited to watch it.
Yeah, completely agree with you there.
I'm
going to see where exactly, like, I don't know how to put this. Like, I'm excited to see exactly, like, if they do lose, how the Bucks react.
Yeah,
because, like, to me, I actually favor the Heat in this matchup, like, pretty heavily. And again, it goes back to things that you talked about too, like not trusting Coach Bud and like the lack of adjustments in the playoffs and just sort of their record and the way that they've handled themselves and the way that they've handled themselves in the playoffs. I'm curious how they adjust from here, because this season was clearly like a let's go all in from them signing Giannis to the big extension, for them getting Drew Holiday,
and then trying for Bogdan and didn't get him.
Like, all of these moves to me speak of like, okay, management's all in now. Yeah. Like, yes, they let Brogdon go, which is like a mistake, and like they weren't ready to commit.
Absolutely.
Then. Now's the time, right? Like, here we go. Like, money where your mouth is. Yep. And if they're not able to do it this year, like, what is the next move? Like, now they're kind of hamstrung. Now they have to make moves. Like, it's not as easy as just signing pieces now or trading picks. So now what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and to be honest, I think this is true of the Bucks anyway, because I don't see them winning a championship. So what do they do in the offseason anyway? I mean, losing in the first round is horrible. Like, that's
DEFCON 1. That's DEFCON 5.
But at the same time, what do they do? And I think that everything that you're bringing up of like things that they should explore, I think that's all true and fascinating. It's just a matter of, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where they go.
Yeah.
Is all.
Yeah. Like I said, if they get out in the first round, that's going to be the big thing. I want to see what they do. I also forgot to mention with the PJ Tucker signing, the Bucks can go to Giannis at center way more often, and it will actually like work versatile in terms of, adding more versatility to that line, to a Giannis center only lineup. So they definitely, you'll have to see who you can close with, whether it's with DiVincenzo, who has been really up and down this year, or God forbid Pat Connaughton, but probably Bryn Forbes has been their best bench player, or you can even go with Bobby Portis. I just think while they might
all these names, and I don't like any of these in a closing lineup.
But the thing is, like, they've been good this year, so I want to see if that continues also. They have questions that need answering. I think they should beat this Heat team, but that's why we both picked this series as the most fascinating to watch out of I think the Nuggets Blazers, to me that's a non-starter. And I know the Blazers are, getting healthy at the right time. They finally figured out some stuff the last week and a half, 2 weeks.
Dude,
but
how many times are the Blazers going to be the low seed team that no one wants to see? How many times are going to hear that?
Yeah, I know. I'm not in on the Blazers. Like, I'm just not.
No, because I hear that every year. Every year I hear, the Blazers aren't your normal low seed.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, okay. And then they just get rocked by whatever team they play, and I go, yeah, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The only year where it came true was when they made the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, but that's 1 year out of
exactly.
I've heard this so far. Hey, the Blazers aren't your average 6, 7, 8 seed. Okay.
Like, there is no way the Nuggets are losing in the first round, even without Jamal Murray. Like, they have been, but I do worry that, like, as they get deeper into the playoffs, that's Jamal Murray and Jokic's two-man game was just such a big part of their offense that they could run so many other things out of that. It's like taking out the tree trunk to the trees.
This Jokic, Aaron Gordon pick and roll with Porter around the side, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, they still have a lot of talent. They're like, Porter has been absolutely spectacular since Murray went down. I think he's averaging like 26 points per game since Murray went down. It's just that two-man game, and Murray was their best, he was their best guard from the perimeter in terms of the dribble drive, and they just know each other so well that they've played together for so long now that they just know what each other's going to do. And Malone was able to build stuff off of that. But they still have Porter Jr., they still have Gordon. I love Facu Campazzo. Not because the name is fun to say, but he's a really good player. I made the joke the other day that he was a super senior in terms of being a rookie because he's 29. But he's played a bunch of professional players overseas, and but they still have talent. It's just that they're not. But they have way more than enough to beat the Blazers. Like, nobody's going to stop Jokic. And the Blazers are going to allow 10 million bajillion points because their defense is terrible. And the Nuggets are not so terrible on the defensive end. So I think the Nuggets win that series in probably 5. But the other 3-6 matchups way more interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's close.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not. We might get a few high-scoring games in the Nuggets-Blazers series for sure, but in terms of, like, series, like 4-1, like, that's probably that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's I think that's pretty cut and dry there.
Mm-hmm.
But, could prove me wrong.
Yeah, we have no problem admitting when we're wrong.
But, I mean, just looking at the surface level, I don't see this doing very much.
They won so many games this year because Dame was just absolutely spectacular in the clutch. It's like, obviously he sustained it throughout the year, but it was such an unsustainable way of winning. And obviously they had to play like that because of injuries and stuff like that, but that is just such a hard way to win a bunch of games, man. Like, you got to get stops at some point.
Can't just give it to one guy and hope he does something.
Yeah, and CJ McCollum's obviously back to help alleviate some of that, but they still got to play on the other end of the floor, man. And I just don't see them stopping the Nuggets at all. Like, at all.
Yeah, it's a little yikes. But we'll see.
The fun one I do want to watch, though, is I like the Knicks-Hawks. I low-key like the Knicks-Hawks matchup also. Like, that's just that series, it's like the series of old school coaches that are back, Tom Thibodeau, Nate McMillan, bringing baseline level competence to the rosters that they have, and both of them were just on fire post All-Star break, and this matchup's going to be interesting for sure because the Knicks still have it's kind of a clogged toilet offense still, but they have a really great defense. And as far as the Hawks go, they've actually been middle of the road defensively since the All-Star break, but also a top 10 offense, which is usually, I'm not going to call them a contender, but if you're talking about like contending or making a deep playoff run, being middle of the road in defense and being top 10 in offense or being top 10 in both, that's a great starting foundation to have. But I'm really fascinated by that matchup.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that matchup's a ton of fun, and it could be interesting to watch. I think the Clippers Mavs series could be interesting to watch too.
I'm not so sure about that one. I think the Mavericks are just gonna get railroaded out of the playoffs.
I think Luka wants to prove a point again.
Yeah, he did prove a point in the series last year. He won 2 games, but
I think he wants to prove he can do it again. I think he wants to prove it wasn't a fluke.
That he can win 2 games, because that's all I see the Mavs winning in this series, man. The Clippers wanted the Mavericks. They wanted this team.
I still think that if Kristaps was fully healthy, and even if Kristaps wasn't fully healthy, if Luka didn't turn his ankle, I still think the Mavs pulled that series out last year.
No, I don't. I don't think so. I like that. The thing with that is, yeah, you could say, okay, you could put Kawhi and Luka, or you could put Kawhi and Paul George alternating on Luka, but they still have the other guys that need to win, right? Or that need to, they need to be effective. And outside of Jalen Brunson and Kristaps, like they have nice role players, but Josh Richardson is erratic as hell. Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell really don't move the needle that much when it comes to matching the talent of the Clippers. Luka has to be spectacular, like averaging 35, 11, and 11 on like 66% or true shooting percentage for them to even have a chance to pull this series out. I don't see it. I think this Clippers team they've found a way to diversify their offensive portfolio. Over the last month, they're not taking as many jumpers as they were when we were kind of like, okay, the Clippers are just a jump shooting team. Still would like to see the free throws go up a little bit, but it's been going up. I just think they are. I just think they're clearly the better team, and I don't see it as much. Like the 4-5 and the 3-6 matchup in the Eastern Conference is more interesting than the Western Conference. The Western Conference series, they could have potentials for high scoring games, but as far as series length, I don't know, man. Might have to move to the second round in the Western Conference for that one, for more longer series.
For me, Western Conference is more straightforward, but it has some fun potential upset matchups. Like the Warriors over the Jazz matchup.
Yeah, I want that to happen so bad. So bad.
Imagine how hard we're gonna pop off if that happens.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna have if the Jazz get booted out of the first round, I might just move Gobert to the top of my MVP list.
Yeah, I love
it. Have Rudy Gobert win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, so we can celebrate the trophies in a locker room, like Dirk did when he won his MVP in 2007. After they got eliminated by the Warriors. Oh wait, no, they don't. I forgot. They have that stupid award show now, so they can't really do that. You can't have that anymore.
Yeah.
But still, it would be hilarious. I want that upset to happen. And I think the Warriors could take a few games off the Jazz. I will say that. I do think that could absolutely happen.
Yeah, 100%. So I think the playoffs are pretty well set. Do you have anything to say about these teams, a post-mortem for any teams that didn't make it?
Post-mortem for teams that didn't make it.
I do. There was an interesting article. I can't remember where it was. I think it might have been on Yahoo Sports about the Pistons. Did you see this article?
No, I did not. I'm a. What was
Let me find this article to uh, attribute the author here because I thought it was an interesting read.
Was it Vincent Goodwill?
Yeah. Wait, was it? Is it this one? Oh, here it is. Okay, so yeah. So no, it was Noah Trister, and it was on Yahoo Sports, and it was the article says Pistons finished near the bottom but have reasons for optimism. Is sort of the idea here, and the general idea is that like, hey, they tanked, but they did it in a unique and positive way, which is something that doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this idea that usually when you tank, your roster is absolute trash.
Yep.
But when you look at the Pistons roster, there's a lot of room there for like good stuff because they have Jeremy Grant, who they list here as a center.
They have some good and interesting young players, man.
Yeah, like so, I know you like Killian Hayes. I like Sadiq Bey quite a bit.
I like Sadiq Bey, and Isaiah Stewart is becoming more than a rough and tough, rugged big that even before that I liked him as a rookie, but now he's starting to like do more stuff, like shoot threes, switch out more, handle the ball a little bit. They have interesting pieces, man.
Yeah, so like when you look at them, and then they still have Demboya there too, and like I still think he's a fascinating like building block. I don't know who's ever
hasn't played
develop.
as much as last year, but he is still an interesting talent for sure.
Yeah, I just like the physical attributes. I think that you look at him the same way you look at like young Giannis, where you're like, man, this guy has like physical tools where he could be something.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then like Killian Hayes, if he gets healthy, I think he'd be really good too. So you look at Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Jeremy Grant, and I guess you throw Demboya in there. They have an interesting enough roster where you go, yeah, this roster is actually pretty promising. And then they get a high draft pick, and you go, okay, they tanked in a way where you're not like, this team is a disaster.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Another team that I had in mind, well, actually two teams I had in mind, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I am all in on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like being a superstar point guard for that franchise. I think it's incredible that the Thunder, he was the reason why I had a Thunder as a play-in team before the season started, and I knew that was optimistic compared to their season projection that everybody had for them. But they were a play-in team before they basically shut them down and decided to tank. But
we have to go back and look at our predictions from the beginning of this season.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go back and look at my I'm gonna have to listen. We're gonna have to listen to our 2 episodes that we did because I'm sure
we had the Rockets really high.
Yeah. Well, I had the Rockets as the 9th seed if they kept James Harden, but obviously I didn't factor in the Harden trade because it didn't happen yet. But if we both knew if they traded Harden, they were going to be fucked. So,
well, I remember saying that even without Harden, I still liked them as like a mid-tier option because I liked John Wall and I liked DeMarcus Cousins and I thought that they could bounce back and have good seasons. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, we're probably going to have a lot of wrong predictions if we go back and listen to these episodes. The other one, speaking of being wrong, I am all in on Anthony Edwards. I'm all in. He's not in. I know we had fears he might have been Wiggins 2.0. I think some of it was kind of maybe lazy on our parts comparing him to Wiggins. I haven't seen someone at that size, height-wise and strength-wise, that can move like that can move in tight spaces like that, and can finish at the rim like that. Like, I think he has a baseline set of skills that I think he's going to be a good player at the very worst, but I believe in his work ethic. I believe in his attitude. I believe in his infectiousness as a teammate. Everybody loves this guy. And, post All-Star break, the dreaded pull-up 3 that we all knocked him for, I think we knocked more his shot selection more than anything, as opposed to his skills and his ability to do it. But since the All-Star break, he's shooting. I think he was shooting 39% on pull-up threes. He was right behind Steph Curry. Since the All-Star break on pull-up threes, I think with Chris Finch in as the head coach and not Ryan Saunders, I think he's been a little bit more creative offensively in how he uses Cat. The Wolves are 15-20 in their last 35 games, and these are playing in games that matter. Like these, as we saw towards the very last day of the season, these games matter. These games mattered, and the Wolves looked like a competent NBA team, and that's without Malik Beasley, serving that 12-game suspension. He had a really good year. D'Angelo Russell has maybe found a role coming off the bench, but I think that future is Cat and Ant. And I'm all in on Anthony Edwards. I'm just gonna say that right now.
So here's my question to you: if they get a top 3 pick,
they're not going to, which is the shitty thing.
Yeah, well, you never know.
Yeah, true. You never know. Like, odds are.
Theoretically, they get a top 3 pick, and they get who do they pick? Because you say they get number 1 pick. Who do they pick? Cade? Cade doesn't. I don't think Cade fits. Because you'd want the ball in Cade or Ant's hands. Like it would take the ball out of one of their hands. I don't think they're necessarily the strongest off-ball player. Either one is necessarily the strongest off-ball player. At least not yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take what? Jalen Suggs? No.
I would still take Cade because I think while he is probably better with the ball in his hands, obviously, I think he has enough workable skills to be an off-ball player. Like he's just a smart basketball player. He's a ball mover. He could shoot.
Would you take Mobley to help offset some of the defensive concerns?
For Cat? That would be interesting. I wouldn't be opposed to the Wolves taking Mobley and having a Cat Mobley front court. Might have some defensive concerns perimeter wise, but Mobley has shown that he could be, an elite, switchable big on that end of the floor. That would be very interesting.
If you ran him at the 4, it helps alleviate at least some of the rim protection concerns.
Yeah, it would help for sure. I wouldn't be opposed to Mobley being picked by the Wolves if they ended up getting a top 3 pick. I just think in terms of guard play, yeah, I know you just traded for Russell and Cat's your best friend, but to me it's like screw that. Just I think an Ant and Cade backcourt is just so much better, has a higher ceiling, that I would just go with that.
I feel so bad for D'Lo because he just can't find a home.
Yeah. Well, there is also a reason for that because we saw what he looked like with the best, if he was the best player on a team, and that's a 42-win, 500 team in the Eastern Conference. I agree with you because because he definitely has some skills that could help a team. Like I said, he's come off the bench and has been playing really well for the Wolves. But
I think the problem is he has an ego where he has a certain role in mind for himself, and he won't let himself do anything less,
and just makes terrible decisions down the stretch too. Yeah. Like there were games this year where Ant would have 38, 40, and he's clearly rolling, like getting to the rim, hitting threes, finding people on the drive, and then the last 2 or 3 minutes of a Wolves game, it'll be Cat and D'Lo 2-man game, and it's like, what are we doing here? You're gonna just ice out the guy who has been the reason you guys were in this game, and my feelings on Cat. I know every year the Timberwolves are the spooky with 2 zeros in the word every year, but this seems a little bit different. I like Jaden McDaniels too. I think he should be getting some consideration for all rookie defensive team or all rookie team. Because I just don't think rookies are that good at defense already that soon. There's been some good defenders in this draft class, by the way. But Jaden McDaniels, I like a Kogi. I just like how Chris Finch has brought that team together. And you know my feelings on Cat. I think you can absolutely build a winning team around Cat. And I like that Chris Finch is finally putting him more at the elbow and stuff like that, because Cat's passing is just immaculate, and it's been shown more with Edwards there. Like,
to be fair, the thing with the Warriors, I think the biggest acquisition for the Warriors is them having a new owner.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the biggest change for the Timberwolves here, and trying to figure out like how this works.
On the weekend that Kevin Garnett got inducted into the Hall of Fame, it just reminds you that, wow, the Wolves really screwed this up. Like, they screwed it up. They have two of the most talented bigs ever in their franchise's history, and they might just screw it up twice, you know? Like, Kevin Garnett was incredible. It was a great weekend for basketball, by the way. The WNBA season started. That was well underway.
We'll end off the show with some Hall of Fame talk. So what did you think of Hall of Fame?
What do I think of the Hall of Fame?
Oh, no, what did you think of the weekend, of the Hall of Fame kind of weekend? So
I still need to catch up on the speeches, but obviously Vanessa Bryant's speech was powerful and definitely gave us more of an insight into Kobe, like the joke she had about Kobe looking down, smiling at her giving a Hall of Fame speech, talking about Kobe. She mentioned that she didn't like to, brag about Kobe in public because it was kind of like the wife bringing down the husband to earth thing. And then she was like, Kobe's probably looking down, smiling at me right now, talking about him in the most public place ever, saying, "Ain't this some shit?"
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty heartwarming. I thought Kevin Garnett shouting out Tim Duncan personally at the end of his speech was really cool because those two are obviously going to be linked forever. He was just like, the battles we had were epic, were nothing short of epic, and I appreciate like the way he was shouting him out. Still need to listen to the Tim Duncan one in full, but the greatest Hall of Fame class ever.
Yeah, and the thing that's crazy is like when you think about this class, right?
I said it kind of open-ended like a question, but it might be.
Like, well, when you look at them, when you always think of like the top three headliners, right? You think of like those three, Kobe, Garnett, Duncan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you look at
Rudy Tomjanovich.
Okay.
You look at the other guys like Rudy Tomjanovich, Tamika Catchings, like. It's a great class.
You even look further. You had Mike Wilbon down there. You have Mike Breen.
Mike Breen. Yep.
Who else? You have the inside the NBA crew.
Like it was a great class, man. It might be it might be the best of all time. I'm trying to pull up the list of like past class so I don't like have recency bias, but Kobe, Duncan, and Garnett, you literally cannot tell the history of basketball without those three guys by themselves.
Yeah. But then you add in the inside the NBA crew. You add in a Mike Wilbon. You add in Mike Breen. Like you add what's up?
Yeah, Mike Breen. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Mike Breen.
You add in all these other guys and all these other people, individuals that you go, wow, this class is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved. I don't know if you got a chance to watch. Obviously, the speeches were on Saturday, but if you watched the Friday night one, they had a great sit down with Shaq, Kenny, and or not Shaq, Kenny, Shaq, Ernie, and Chuck on the couch, talking about the show and talking about kind of their induction and being the first ones inducted with this new media award and this new media inductee award. And that was a special thing to watch. And I've never seen Charles get choked up before. Like you never think of Charles Barkley and think like that's an emotional dude.
Right.
But like watching him get choked up and like, did you watch that?
I didn't watch it. No, I didn't catch the Friday stuff.
I'll send that to you afterwards. It's a pretty powerful thing because he sits and he talks about Ernie, and they asked him what Ernie means to you, and Chuck kind of gets emotional, and he says that I'll tell you a story, and he says the thing that got Ernie, it was like 1 in the morning, and Ernie never calls. We used to always text or whatever, and Ernie called me at 2 in the morning, and he said, I need to talk to you about something. And so I said, okay, what? And he said, as a 65-year-old man, white man, what can I do to help understand and help with this social justice stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And he said that they talked for a couple hours, and he said afterwards, Charles hung up the phone. He said that I felt so touched and so honored that he would call, and he felt compelled enough to call me at 2 a.m. to talk about this stuff because it's something that he felt he wanted to have a conversation about. And I think like that speaks to the relationship that those guys have, and it speaks to like how much they care about each other and care about kind of everything that's going on, and how much they care about the NBA. And it's something that like I know we've given them a lot of praise before, like being this entertainment and being, you know, important to the league, but like I don't think like inside the NBA is to me something that separates the NBA from like every other sports thing.
Yeah.
And it's such a special thing that I'm so happy the NBA has, and the NBA is lucky to have those group of guys.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a part of my life all throughout watching basketball, obviously. And, I definitely have had more criticisms about it over the recent years. But when they get going and it's the banter back and forth, that's what makes inside the NBA, man. The banter, the jokes, Did
you see Shaq rubbing on Chuck the other night?
Rubbing his hamstring. No, he had a cramp in his hamstring, and Shaq was just I was like, this is gonna be memeable stuff. I didn't catch it live. I didn't catch it live. I caught the stuff on Twitter afterwards, and I was just like, oh my god, like this is. And definitely since Shaq was added on the show, it added more not volatility, because I guess when I say that implies like, something bad or whatever, but it's definitely more you don't know what you're gonna get with that crew. It's Shaq adds an element of humor and randomness that just at its peak, it just makes inside the NBA just really funny and just awesome to watch. Like I said, they might be a little bit out of touch with their analysis, or out of date with their analysis sometimes. I definitely, I've been vocally critical of them, especially when they've gone at guys like Embiid for basically not being an every possession post-up player, which is impossible to do now.
Right.
But they're Hall of Famers. What the stuff that they do say, it does bring value and they'll make a good point every once in a while. It's like with anything else. And more than anything, they're just entertaining as hell. And I'm glad that show is still on, because they provide all the great moments. Like, my favorite moments, like they had Chuck reading off the teleprompter, calling himself a dumbass for the NBA promos. Like they had Chuck basically saying like, "This is T-Mobile's Fave 5 list. Let me give you my top 5 players. I'm a dumbass." And Chuck is just like, "Oh my god, they just made me read that." Or Chuck ragging on Phoenix for being broke and not having people at the game and stuff like that. Like, just moments like that just make inside the NBA immortal. That show is well deserved Hall of Fame spot. And to Mike Wilbon and Mike Breen too, because we didn't grow up with prime Marv Albert. We kind of got like late.
We got old like
we got
barely.
We got late prime Marv Albert in the 2000s and the late 2010s, but the last 5 years have just been really horrible to listen to and just unpleasant. And but we grew up with prime, it's still prime Mike Breen, and he's my favorite basketball play-by-play guy. Him and Ryan Ruocco and Mike Tirico, honestly, like those are the three I think of. And Kevin Harlan too. Can't forget the legend Kevin Harlan. Almost did there. There's just a bunch of good ones, but Mike Breen is like, for me, I guess he's our Marv Albert, I guess.
Well, it's funny when you think about guys that are like iconic and things like that. You always think of like the iconic phrases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I am at the park or shooting baskets, anything, I yell bang, and in my head,
yep.
or not Mara. I hear Mike Breen, right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I hear it in my head every time
Mhm.
every time I make anything. I yell bang, and I hear in my head. I hear Mike Breen.
And the only two players to get Mike Breen to say bang twice back to back is Stephen Curry and Luka Doncic.
Yeah,
with Luka with last year's buzzer beater against the Clippers, and then Steph Curry pulling up from 35 feet to beat the Thunder in overtime. That is it's speaking of moments where it's like I knew where I was. I remember exactly where I was watching that game. I was hyped for that game because the Thunder and the Warriors had always played great games versus each other in the regular season, even during the Mark Jackson era, just because there was so much talent. But it was like Warriors, Thunder, Saturday night, ABC. I am in my apartment and I am not going anywhere else unless the homies come over and watch the game with me. And when he pulled up from 35, I was like, no way. And I went nuts. Like, my neighbors probably thought I was insane the way I was shouting at my TV and just shouting Curry the entire time and just hearing the bang, bang in the background. Like, Mike Breen's a legend, man. He's been there for a lot of the games that I've watched, obviously.
yeah. No, I totally agree. And like, well, all inductees this year were well deserved. So,
Yep.
Looking forward to next year, though. We got Chris Webber, who had a very touching interview. I don't know if you saw it. He had a very touching interview with Jalen Rose after it was announced.
Yeah, that was it. That was like, I don't know. I can't even think of an equivalent, but like, when like a legendary TV show has like two actors reunite together after like one of them leaves in the earlier seasons or whatever, and like they come back later in the show, and it's like, oh god,
they don't address it. Like, they didn't even address like we're squashing a beef. They just kind of like moved past it and was like, all right, this is done.
What like, I'm good with that, because if you look into the beef and stuff, and obviously, listening to Bill Simmons' podcast over the years, like, we all know how close him and Jalen are and stuff. It really just sounded like Chris Webber wanted nothing to do with Jalen Rose, not even speak to him, not even, acknowledge him in public and stuff like that. So to me, it's like, yeah, they didn't address it yesterday, but just the fact that those two got on TV together for the first time in like 20 years. I think the last time they made a TV appearance together, it's on YouTube. You can look it up, and it was such a cool interview, and their friendship and stuff really shined through. But just seeing them together yesterday on TV for the first time in forever, that in itself just lets me know, okay, they're probably good. Like, they squashed it. Don't need to hash it out.
I loved you, and they were together, and they're reminiscent about some stuff, and you can tell that their connection is still so strong, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's severed, like, they still have.
They've always said they're brothers, like, they've always said like they're brothers. It's just they weren't talking, and it was kind of just like, I know all of Detroit was happy too, because they're Detroit legends, like him and Jalen Rose and Chris Webber. They were legends. So I know some Detroit writers that I follow on Twitter, Jamel Hill, more prominently. Like, I know Detroit natives were happy to see the reunion also, as well as basketball fans and old school Fab Five fans. So it was good to see. It was good to see the men fences.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, next year is Chris Webber, obviously, as we talked about, Paul Pierce, Chris Bosh, and Ben Wallace. So interesting class.
Interesting class for sure. I don't know if you have a strong Ben Wallace take. I
think he's a great defensive big. I don't know if I put him in the same class of defender as like what I would think of as like a Dennis Rodman,
4-time defensive player of the year. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. Ben Wallace is definitely deserving of being in the Hall of Fame as like one of the greatest defenders ever. I don't know how high I rank him. I'd have to really think about how high I put him.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people in our generation and people who will look at Ben Wallace's metrics will look at it and be like, how is this dude not in the Hall of Fame already? But to me, it's also like, I want to put him in, but also I look at him on the other end and I'm like, okay, yes, I know offense isn't everything, but you have to play both sides of the court, and he was a liability on that end. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't have because I know the older media have been feeling strongly about Wallace making this class, and I know a bunch of people on the other side think he should be a no-brainer Hall of Famer. I guess I just don't have a strong opinion either way. I don't know if I would have put him in the Hall of Fame. Like, he has a case. I just don't know if I would have made that case, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Very fringe case to me.
He's a what?
He's a fringe case to me. Like, I would like on the outside looking in, and I think I think if you want to reward him for that defensive metric, I think that's fine. I don't necessarily. To me, it comes down to the eye test too. Of he played in a great situation with great all-time defenders too. Like not all, like he played for great defensive teams.
Mm-hmm. He was the best one though.
He was the best one. He was sort of the linchpin of that. But again, it goes down to a thing where like I don't. I might get shit for this too. I don't think this goes back to the Jazz Slander. I don't think Rudy Gobert. If Rudy Gobert wins more Defensive Player of the Year, I don't think Rudy Gobert is a Hall of Fame player.
He's going to be though with all those awards.
Yeah, but like in your mind, when you think of Rudy Gobert, do you think Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer?
No, we'll see by the end of his career though, because I do think at some point, like. As much as I like to slander Rudy Gobert, and as much as I think people have now fetishized, is that a word? Or I'm not saying the word right. How they fetishize rim protection. He's probably going to win a couple more Defensive Player of the Years, and at that point, it's like he is a great defensive player. Would I take his style of defense in the playoffs? No, that's going to be the conundrum with him, but. No, he's not a Hall of Famer to me. He's probably will be one by the end of his career.
Yeah, but again, that kind of goes to my point too of like, dude, if you're not playing, if your style of defense doesn't work when it matters, like, what does it matter?
Yeah, exactly. But it is a regular season award.
Yeah, but again, like when you look,
it doesn't work in it, or I wouldn't say it doesn't work in the playoffs because I do think some of it is overblown because James Harden is just impossible to stop anyway. But yeah, he's not a Hall of Famer to me.
Yeah, totally agree.
Like I would take, I mean, honestly, I know people have talked about Rudy Gobert as like the best defensive player of this generation. I'm sure he has an argument, but I would just take Draymond and Kawhi personally out of this last decade. Like those two, full stop. Just give me those guys at their peak.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
So, I can see the argument for having Ben Wallace in there, and I don't disagree with having him in there. I just think he's a very fringe case.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be careful with putting guys in that are like fringe cases. Like, again, I'm a Laker fan.
It's too late for that now. Everybody's putting people in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I'm a Laker fan. I don't think Michael Cooper should be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. Interesting.
Just me.
No.
Right?
No. That's fair. I've heard either or on him also. So
I mean, so the thing when you look at Michael Cooper, like, yeah, he was a Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time NBA champion. He's never made an All-Star team.
Yep.
He's been a first or second all-time NBA or defensive team player 8 times. Okay. Obviously he's done great. I would put him more in as a coach, a WNBA coach, than I would as a player.
And no all NBA teams either, which I think for me that's a better. All-star teams matter, but if you make the all NBA team, like that holds a little bit more weight with me.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, to me, you have to have at least 1 or 2 of all NBA or all-star.
Yeah, exactly. And Michael Cooper doesn't have any of that.
No. So to me, like, I don't know why he's in there. Again, it's in there. He's in there because he was part of the Showtime Lakers.
Yeah.
So, how much of that do you put on him riding coattails, and how much again? I don't want to discredit Michael Cooper. Michael Cooper's one of the best defenders, like perimeter defenders, the league has ever seen. That's fine, understandable. But is he a Hall of Famer based on just that merit? I don't know, and I don't think so.
No.
And I would put him more as a coach than I would as again as a player. But again, that's just my opinion on it. And again, I can see the argument for either way. But to me, and this is coming from a Laker fan, that like I don't think
I do think it should be. There's part of me because I read a really compelling thread on why the Basketball Hall of Fame allowing a lot of people in is actually good for basketball, because basically the case was for this guy, his baseline projection was, for me, the Hall of Fame, the one qualifier is, can you tell the history of basketball without telling that player's name? And if the answer is no, then he should be in the Hall. And he tried to make the case that it's actually kind of charming that a inclusive sport like basketball is more lenient with their Hall of Fame than maybe other sports are. But at the same time, like, some of the people that are coming in is like, it's like, okay, there has to be some kind of limit, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. When you look at a guy like Michael, again, I mean, I feel so bad for using Michael Cooper as like an example, but like when you look at Michael Cooper and you look at his resume versus someone else's resume, there's a lot of players that aren't going to make the Hall that are going to be that have better resumes than Michael Cooper. Mm-hmm. And then you look at it and you go, well, why? Then the complaint becomes, why is this person in but Michael Cooper's in? And then it opens the floodgates, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's where you get the problem.
It should also be it sounds stupid and simplistic, but I think it should also be, if you say that player's name and you think yes automatically, like Chris Webber, yes, Hall of Famer to me. Like, I don't even think it's a question. The guy was the best player was a top 5 player at his peak for 4 seasons, averaged 20 and 10 over his career.
He probably deserves to be in the Hall of Fame just based on college alone.
Yeah, just especially because it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like, he should be in for the Fab Five alone. It was kind of crazy that it took him this long to get into the Hall of Fame, but that's the one I'm happy about. Chris Webber, Chris Bosh too, although I think he should have made it this year, but I kind of, when you look at the nominees that were, like the class that we just illustrated, I could kind of see why he got moved back to the other class, to the 2021 class. But Chris Bosh to me, also a Hall of Famer. But Ben Wallace, like,
I'm a little iffy there.
Like, yeah, it should also, Hall of Fame should just be as simple as that sometimes. Like, where if you say the player's name, if you think Hall of Fame, yes, he should be in.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Is there any other hot takes for the playoffs that you have? The real playoffs actually start this Saturday, but anything you're looking for in the play-in? Are we just basically putting on our Charlotte Hornets hats?
Yeah, I think we're putting on our Charlotte Hornets hats and hoping for some really, really good
LaMelo Day one stand up.
Yeah, I'm hoping for some good Steph Curry play in the playoffs to see some Jazz tears.
That's my main goal, because then we could have Jazz Slander Part 2. We can name one of our episodes Jazz Slander Part 2.
And it's just us ripping the Jazz.
Yep.
All day. I love it.
Love it.
All right. Cool. So thanks you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you guys next week.
The B.O.B.